Impact day two. Day two on the number system with integers. Today we're going to be talking about some decimals, some rational numbers. Going to get into this and going to talk about more abstract things. So please make sure you're staying with me on the lesson. And here we go. A decimal is a rational number that represents part of a whole, where the part is base 10. I'm going to explain this in a minute. All decimals can be represented on a number line. So, -5 7/7 is a rational number. Okay, 17 2/10 is a rational number. -2 5/10 is a rational number. When we talk about this term called a rational number, it's where you can put a number in fraction form where the bottom number doesn't equal 0. So let's take the number 7. Is it rational? Yes, because 7 equals 7/1. And that's the same thing for a negative value, right? -8. Well, that equals -8/1. We've proved that these are rational. Remember, the bottom number can't equal 0. But you say, hey, Mr. Mill, what about -2.5? Okay, so let's prove it where we can put it in a fraction form, whether it's a simple fraction or an improper. So -2 5/10 equals what? -2 5/10, right? That's the mixed number of this. To get that into improper, we multiply and we add. 10 times 2 is 20. Unlike terms would be a negative. Plus 5 is -25. So that equals -25/10. So that's just a little bit of an enrichment piece there on that. Okay. Use the number line below to plot and label points in set number 1, then plot and label the points in set number 2. Okay. So, all right. So here we are. 3, 1, -3. Pretty easy. -5. And let's label those with letters A, B. 1 is C, 3 is D. Set 2 is a little bit more challenging because now we have decimals. 2.5, well, that's right in the middle, and that's letter E. 3 and 75/100. Well, here's 3, 4, there would be 3.5, right? So in between those two would be letter F. G is -1 and 5/10. So that would be right there, right between -1 and -2, right in the middle. We're going to label that, and that is -1 5/10. Letter H is -3 and 5/10. So it's going to be between -3 and -4. And it's going to go right there, and it's going to be letter H. Okay, so we're starting to plot rational numbers, all right, on the number line. What term can be used to describe the numbers in set 1? Well, these are what we call integers. Integers are whole numbers and their opposites. What did you notice when you plotted points G and H? G and H. And how is that different from plotting E and F? Well, they're going to fall in between the intervals. That's what it is. So it just falls in between. Falls in between. All right. The integers. And that's the difference. All right. When it's an integer, it's going to fall on that number. But when it's a rational number, it's going to go in between the integers and make it a decimal. Or it could be a mixed number, however you want to list it, right? Okay. Let's press and pause there and kind of get caught up. All right, moving on here. Use the number line below to order the following positive decimals. Positive decimals. So if we look at our number line, there it is. Here's the interval. And the interval has a tick in the middle. So that's a half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, and so on. So I've kind of got to guesstimate here a little bit where it is. So letter A is 4 and 2/10. Well, 4.5 would be there. So 4 and 2/10 would be about right there, right? We're going to call that letter A. 1 and 6/10. Well, here's 1.5 because 0.5 is half. 1.6 would fall about right there, and I'm going to list that label B. Okay. So I'm just kind of guesstimating where that goes, but I know it's above 1.5. 1 and 5/100. Well, you have to be careful because now we're down to the hundreds place. Well, it's certainly less than 1.5, and actually it's pretty close to 1, right? 1 and 5/100 is very close to 1. Letter C. Letter D is 8/10. Well, 8/10 is less than 1. There is no whole number here. It's a 0. So it's a little bit less than 1. We're going to kind of guess that it's right there. Letter D. Okay. And now let's do the same thing for our negative numbers on the negative decimals, negative rational numbers on the number line here, and positive, I guess. Letter A is -3 and 5/10. So here's -3 and here's -4. If I guessed right in the middle there it is, I'll put a dot and I'll call that letter A. Letter B is -4 and 5/10. -4 and 5, or -4 and 2/10, excuse me. Well, here would be 5. So it's going to be a little bit smaller than that, and I'm going to call that letter B. Letter C is 1 and 1/10. It's a little bit greater than 1. If I was to split this into 10 equal parts, that's what they're doing. So it would be about right there. We're going to call that letter C. Okay. Letter D is -2 and 7/10. -2, -3. Here's -2 and 7/10. And there's letter D. Finally, letter E is 1 and 9/10. So I go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2. It's in here. And remember, I already chopped this up. Now, it's not exactly 10 places, but I'm going to guess that it's going to be about right there. And there we have it. So again, we're just getting customized, acclimated to these numbers, these decimals, whether they're positive or negative on a number line. Let's flip the page. All right, number 3. All right, what are the numbers from least to greatest, and sketch a number line to help if needed. I don't think we need a number line. All right, I think the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. -6. Okay. Another negative, -3 and 9/10. And then it's pretty easy from here. 4. The next biggest number is 4 and 6/10. And then 16. Again, same thing here. Least to greatest, be careful of that. The bigger the negative, the smaller it is. -7. I only have one negative left, so I know it's next. Okay, we have to be careful here. So we need to compare this decimal and this decimal. So when I compare decimals, I list them vertically. And I go from left to right. 7 is greater than 0, so I know that that is next. And then 1 and 77/100, and of course we know 17 is the greatest. Okay. Continue on number 5. Use the symbols to make each statement true. Less than, greater than, or equal to. Less than, greater than, or equal to. -5 and 5/100 is blank to -5. And it's actually less than, because the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. This is a bigger number than this, but it's a negative, so it makes it smaller. 3 and 58/100 and 3 and 2/10. Okay, so clearly 3.5, it's greater than. Now we're comparing 1 and 75/100 and 75/100, but remember, they're both negatives. This is actually a bigger number, but since it's a negative, it makes it smaller. It's further to the left on the number line. If I was to do this, and here would be 0, here's 1, here's 2, this number would be right here. These are negatives. This number would be over here, okay? And these are actually equal because 24.0 and 24 is the same, whether it's negative or positive. Okay. Determine on number 6, determine which students completed the task correctly. All right. So they were asked to write the decimals of -3 and 5/10. So who completed it correctly? A decimal less than 3 and 5/10. Well, remember, the bigger the negative, the smaller it is. That's the only one. These two students did not. That is equal to it, and that is greater than it. Okay, greater than it. All right. So again, more negative numbers sliding down to the last piece, and this is kind of a sample deal here. Okay, and we're just going to do one. All right, I'm going to pick a spinner. All right, we're going to list it least to greatest, and we'll go with spinner A. So the smallest number there is -9. The next smallest is -2.9, -1.4. Then the next is 68 hundredths, and then 3, and then 6.0, and 11.2. Okay. I would like for you to do these other spinners, just writing them in the order that they want, greatest to least, least to greatest, and then pause the video and check yours with mine, please. So the next one's going to be greatest to least. I see 12. I see 7.7. I see 4. I see a 72 hundredths. I see the next greatest number would be -1 and 3/10, -1 and 4/10, and -5. Least to greatest here, the smallest one is -16. The next smallest decimal is -3 and 8/10. The next smallest one is the last negative in our group, -1.4. Then we're 19 hundredths. And then we're at the number 1. And then we go to 5 and 8/10 and 11. Okay. Last one, greatest to least, looking for the biggest number. Clearly, I can see that it is 19. After 19, the next greatest number would be, well, what's bigger, 9 or 9 and 7/10? 9 and 7/10, and then 9. Very close. All right, the next one would be 55 hundredths. And now we're into our negatives. The bigger the negative, the smaller it is. So 1 and 4/10 would be next. -2, and then -6.1. Okay, so there they are. I don't really care about that. If you flip the page and take a look at the homework, here it is. Homework 2. We're going to get after it right here. Enjoy. You have them all. Have a good day.